and welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. Birth stories, birth education, and the pursuit of surrendering it all to God. Let's get started. Hey, everybody. Happy day. Hope you're having a great week so far, whenever you are listening to this during your week. I'm excited. Our Q&A episode is coming up in a couple weeks, and all of the questions have been submitted. It's been recorded. I can't wait for you guys to hear that. So looking forward to that. It comes out the first week of March. Also, if you have not left a review of this show, if you listen to this every week, I hope this isn't getting redundant, but we're still in our early stages of this podcast, and we are just looking forward to the future and just growing this audience and having more women be impacted each week, and more men too, from these stories, women helping women, you guys sharing just your experiences with your births and your faith with each other and lifting people up. I know personally, when I've been pregnant and even when I'm not pregnant, I listen to birth story podcasts, and I still am learning so much. I've been in the birth world for 9 years now, and there is always more to learn. And so I'm just inspired myself listening to these, and I hope that it inspires other people too. So whatever platform you are listening to on, please just go ahead and leave a review. Do it right now, press pause, do it now, and then it only takes about 30 seconds, and then come back and listen to this awesome episode. And if you love it, it would also really help us if you shared the episode. Share it just with a link, or you can screenshot whatever you're listening to and just tag us on Instagram, Surrendered Birth Services, and just share it with your story. Share it with your family and friends and help get the word out about this. It would mean the world to us for sure. Now, we have some stories for you today with my friend Kylie. She's a good friend of mine. I've known her for years. Got to come share her birth stories with me in person, which was so much fun. Let's see. Emergency C-sections, rainbow babies, VBACs, and more, all in Kylie's stories today. So we had a great time recording this, and I think that will be evident when you listen to it. So I hope you have so much fun. Listen as Kylie shares her 3 birth stories and how God carried her through each one of them. Welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. I am your host, Kayla Heater, and I have a friend with me today who is here to share her 3 birth stories. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you and your life.
All right. Hi, Kayla. Thanks for bringing me onto the podcast today. I'm really excited to share my stories. My name is Kylie Wright, and I am from a small town of Reedsville, North Carolina. And I am a teacher, a virtual teacher for the state of North Carolina. So I am in the home setting all day, which I really, really like. I am married to Wesley Wright, my husband. We are now going on almost 13 years. Yes, 13 years. We started dating in middle school, 7th grade. So
really you're going on like 20 some years.
Right. I've known him longer than I have been alive. So that's great. And we have 3 kids. We have Brinley, who is 8, Briar, who is 6, almost 7. And then we have Baylor, who is 2. Anything else? Anything I missed?
No, that about covers it. We'll find out other things as you tell your stories.
All right.
So let's get started then. Brinley's 8, so she must be your first. So
Brinley is my first, and Wesley and I wouldn't say we weren't trying, but we were not preventing. And I can remember vividly, we went to a wedding. Shout out to Danielle and Chris Peoples. We were at their wedding, and I was just really tired. And I didn't know why I was really tired. And we were driving back home. My husband's military, so we were getting back to base, and I couldn't stay awake on the road. And I was like, what is wrong? And so we finally made it home. And the next day, I took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. And I was really shocked because I don't remember trying, but I don't remember not trying. And so I was shocked when that came up. Ever since I was little, I had this fear that I would never be able to have kids. And so that was a redeeming thing for me for when that pregnancy test popped up that I would get pregnant. Not sure where that fear came from other than the devil himself, but no one in my family's ever had issues getting pregnant. And so that was really redeeming for me when that pregnancy test said positive. And so we went about all the things, and then I was 24. I was really young, and I had to find a provider. And again, my husband's military, and so I knew I didn't want to go the military route. And so I found through conversation, because we lived in Virginia Beach at this time, I didn't know much about any providers there. And so with many conversations with friends, I found a provider that was a really small provider. It was just him and 2 nurses. And so I got to see him every visit and my 2 nurses every visit. So we got to create that relationship together. So that was fun.
Oh, that's so rare and so cool.
Yes.
So, like, you definitely knew who you were going to see every time.
Yes, there was no questioning. And the nurse knew me by name. The doctor came in, knew me by name, knew my situation. So it was really neat having that experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't know of anyone in Greensboro like that. So that's so cool. So how did your pregnancy go then?
My pregnancy was textbook pregnancy, and it was great. No sickness. I know. Just wait, though. The third, it's a little different. No sickness with the first one. She was growing. She was doing well. I was doing well. We made it to 37 and a half weeks, and I went into labor. Water broke. I took a nap. And they say to eat, salsa and chips, and we did have Mexican that day. That's one of the things that I've heard people say.
Spicy foods.
Spicy foods. And I had that, not intending to go into labor, and we had been walking downtown Norfolk all day, and I remember telling Wesley, I'm not feeling well, but of course it was my first one, didn't really recognize the symptoms then. And so I laid on the couch, took a nap, woke up, my water broke on the couch. And I remember as Wesley being a new dad, I said, my water just broke. And he called my mom, funny story. And he called her and said, well, Kylie's water just broke, but don't head this way because we don't know if they're going to keep her. And that's always a funny story he tells because he's like, now that I'm 3 kids in, I know that if your water breaks, that's a sign that
they're going to keep
you. Yes. So we get to the hospital.
So had you started contractions yet?
A little bit, nothing major. But then we get to the hospital and we're checking in, and Wesley's so nervous. He spills his drink all over the phone system.
Oh.
And later into labor, the nurses would come in and say, our phone system's down. Someone broke it. And it was Wesley. He was so nervous. And so, we check in. I get that one last picture of my bump, and then they start kind of hitting a little bit. Nothing was packed. Nothing was ready to go. We lived 5 minutes from the hospital. So Wesley went home, and supposedly he said he was packing our bags, but it turned out that he was sitting on the couch watching football. It was a football game.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Wes Wright.
Yes. So my friend at the time was in the labor room with me.
Did he just forget?
No, I don't think he understood what was coming.
He didn't know, this is it, our baby is coming?
No, I think it was a denial thing.
Self-preservation.
Yes. And so my best friend, I'm sitting there, and I go, where is Wesley? And his aunt is in the room with me as well. She lived in Chesapeake. And she looks at me, looking back, she looked at me like, oh, crap, he's in trouble. But it turned out she was on the phone and she was pretending he was on the elevator, but he was really at home watching football. And so she told him, you need to get up here. So he got up there right at the bad contractions.
With your bags.
Yes, with the bags, walks in, gets there, and I did choose the epidural route. And so he gets right in there as they're putting in the epidural, and then all things calm.
So he missed all the action.
He missed all the action, all the action. And so, and thank goodness for Kristen Fowler, who was with me, and then Patty, his aunt, because they were holding my hands, all the things. And so, and then my mom gets there, and I remember my mom flying into the room with her purse. She throws it down, and she's like, how can I help you? And I was sound asleep. And she was like, what is going on? And so it was just a really calm atmosphere. We had my big thing is I wanted worship music playing, and I can remember Let It Rain was on, and it was time to push. And this was, so for my first labor, my water broke at 6 that night, and Brindley came out at 5 a.m. So less than 12 hours first labor.
Wow.
And I pushed maybe 20 minutes and she was out. It was great. Easy, textbook, nothing traumatic. Really good experience with the first one.
That's good.
Yes.
So then you're 24. You are living in Virginia on base?
We
Or-
are not on base at this time.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And you have a newborn at home. So how did breastfeeding go? How did postpartum go?
Really good for me. I didn't have any issues with breastfeeding. Brinley latched right away. She did great with that. I had support. I wouldn't say so much. I wasn't a big lactation consultant support person, but through friends that were in the same season, they did a lot of coaching with me. I remember sitting in the nursing moms room at church, and we would all talk about the things of how to make breastfeeding easier. But that was great for me. I didn't have any problems there. Postpartum, I've been blessed. I really didn't have any issues there as well. You know, that maybe that one night where you just have that meltdown and you get so
The night
upset.
before your milk comes in.
Yes, and I had that night. But I can remember that night more with Briar than I do Brinley. Looking back, it was really good. My mom was my biggest support. She was with me for almost 2 weeks, helping make that transition. So it was a really good support. And Wesley being military, he had the time off too. So it was great.
Oh, that's awesome. How long do they get off in the military?
Yeah, I think he had 2 weeks off. I think he took 2 weeks off, but I'm not sure if it depends on what unit and
Your
stuff they're with.
situation.
Right.
Yeah. Gotcha. And then it sounds like you had a really good community too.
I did have a really good community. My best friend, she had a baby 4 weeks after me. Our pastor's wife had a baby 4 weeks before me. So we were all in this season of life together that we just got to do together. In our small group, all of us had little babies. It was great. So it was a good support group.
So then had you guys planned on having more children? Because, you know, the first one you said you weren't really preventing, but you weren't really trying. So what happened next time?
Okay, so the next time, you're going to laugh at this story, Kayla. We were not planning for the next one. And I can remember what we were eating for dinner, and I just wasn't feeling well. We had salads, and I had cut up peppers and steaks and onions and put it all together. And Wesley's in the shower, and I had not started my period yet. But I was breastfeeding, so I was like, I'm not going to get pregnant. I'm breastfeeding, which is not true.
Not true.
Not true. I'm a living testimony to that.
How old was Brinley?
Brinley was 9 months old. No, she was 8 months old.
Okay,
Brinley was 8 months old. And so I had some pregnancy tests because a couple times before I just tried, and I took one, and 2 to 3 minutes pops up. So Wesley's in the shower, and I'd taken it, and it popped up immediately. And I remember laying it to the side and turning it over and just kind of sitting there in shock. And he goes, "What is it?" And I said, "You have to wait 2 to 3 minutes." But I had
you already knew?
Yes. And so he's like, "What is it?" And I think he heard it in my voice. And I remember him taking the shower curtain and pulling it back as hard as he could and goes, "What is it?" And I just started bawling my eyes out. And needless to say, we did not eat the salads. And I called my mom. I was like, "Mom, is there 2 pink lines?" She's like, "Honey, I think so." And I just remember crying. And we did not speak for 48 hours.
You and Wesley?
No, we did not speak. Wesley and I did not speak for 48 hours because we were so in shock that we had an 8-month-old at home and we were pregnant again. And I just could not figure out when this happened. Like, I'm a planner, and sometimes I can look back, but I couldn't figure out. So we go to the first appointment. They do the measuring and all that. And they're like, "You're this many days along." And I was like, "Wesley, get the calendar out. Like, when did this happen?"
When did this happen?
And he got the calendar out, and it was the night he came back from deployment from Spain. So,
well, there you go.
There we have it.
That was a very passionate night for the two of you.
Yes. So, after a little bit, we took it in. We were so excited. And we found out a cool way at the doctor's office. We both obviously had a girl. We really wanted a boy. And the doctor wrapped the gift. We took it home to Brinley, and she opened up boys' clothes. So we got to have that moment together, finding out that Briar was a boy. And here we are, about to have another baby. And I am 38 weeks, and I do not feel well. I can tell that my body isn't right compared to the first one. I go to the doctor. I'm like, something's not right. I don't feel well. This baby is massive.
Yeah.
And so, they do the ultrasound, which is not even right. And he's like, "Oh, he's only 8 pounds. You're fine." And he told me this analogy. He's like, if you get on an airplane and it starts moving, you don't want to jump off. So you're moving along, and we're just going to keep moving along. And so I go home. And I remember that weekend, we all came down with the norovirus.
That'll do it.
Oh, and it's coming out both
Ends.
ends, and we do not feel well. My mom comes up to help because the baby's sick. I'm sick. Wesley's sick. She gets sick. Then his parents come up and help. They get sick.
Well,
So
yeah.
we're all sick. And I go to the hospital. I feel even worse, not because of the sickness, but I could just tell my body wasn't right. And the doctor, they keep me there for a little bit. They're like, no, you're okay. And they send me home. I'm like, okay. So we go out to dinner that night. And
okay, you went out to dinner, so now everyone's better.
I didn't feel like cooking.
Okay.
So we needed to go out to
Good
dinner.
enough to eat, though?
Yes. And so we're at the beach in Virginia Beach, and we go out on the beach, and I can feel the contractions coming. I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Well, they kind of slow up again. We go home. We go to bed. And about 2 o'clock, no, I think it's like 1 o'clock that morning, they hit really hard, like really hard. Like there's no easing up every 1 to 2 minutes. And Wesley invited a Marine over to watch Brindley. Well, the Marine was taking forever to get there. I don't know what was taking so long.
So your parents aren't there anymore and his parents aren't there anymore. Okay.
They had gone home. Our parents had gone home. So here we are. And I forgot to mention that. And the Marine gets there and Wesley's driving, stopping at every stoplight. I'm like, if you don't hurry up, I'm not gonna, this is not good. So we finally got to the hospital and we get going up to the second floor and I don't feel well. Like my body doesn't feel well. And so we're laboring, things are going well. I'm progressing and my water finally breaks. And I'm at a 7. Yes. And, at this point, my mom comes in and moms, they have the intuition and she looks at me and she says, "You're not well." And I said, I don't know what's going on. I wasn't in a good mental space. I wasn't feeling well. And I remember the nurses came in. They had to put oxygen on me. They were flipping me in all different directions.
So did you have your epidural yet?
At this point, not yet.
Not yet.
Yet. But I did a little bit after this. And it turns out my mom actually went into the hallway and told the doctor, "You need to do something now. It's not going well." And they came in and they said, "We're watching. We're going to see what her body does for a little bit. But the baby's heart rate is dropping into the 70s. And
this was before your epidural?
Yes.
Okay.
And then my blood pressure was 80/40.
Oh.
Yes. And it was a very scary moment. And then I got the epidural, and obviously things didn't change in any right direction.
No,
they got
epidural
worse.
can lower your blood pressure.
Right. So it got worse. And I went into a space where I don't recall what happened from there. And the doctors come rushing in and they throw the OR clothing to my husband and say, put this on. And they give me something to drink to say,
chalky drink.
Yes, I remember it, but I don't remember it. So I took that to drink, and they're literally prepping me. I know they increased the epidural, and they're prepping me as we're running down the hall so fast that Wesley doesn't have shoes on in the OR room. He forgets his phone, so we don't have any pictures. No, we don't. So that's really hard for me. And they get me back there, and I remember walking in, and literally 2 doctors were standing there ready to go. And the nurses were all around, and they strapped me down to the OR table, arms out, and I'm doing the twitch, that you get when things are working, hormones are going. And so immediately they cut me open, and I just remember looking at Wesley like in fear because I didn't know what was going on.
Right.
But I was coherent, and it was just a bunch going on, and I felt Briar come out. There was a lot of relief there. But they immediately rushed him to the side table and said, "We may have to take him to a different hospital if we don't get his sugar under control." And so here I am. I didn't even get to see Briar when he first came out. I don't have any pictures of anything in there. I remember them taking him to the side and working with him. He was crying. He was doing all those things, but his blood sugar was really low. And they took him out for a little bit, and then they stitched me up. And I just told Wesley, I said, "I want you to follow him. I'm okay." And so I was in the OR room for a little bit by myself while Wesley followed him. They got him under control, and I came out to post-op, and I don't remember anything. and it was really sad. I was on so much medication and in shock. First thing I remember is 24 hours later, actually seeing him. My mom and Wesley were troopers. They knew I wanted to breastfeed. They knew all of my things there. They knew my birth plan, and they followed that even while I was out. I still had to be on oxygen after that delivery. A lot of help was needed. But after that 24 hours, they kept me a couple days. I was doing well, but I had to heal from the C-section, which was completely different healing than my vaginal birth before. And so going from a textbook labor to this labor that was terrifying, 2 different experiences for me.
Did they ever figure out what was wrong with you and like why all that happened?
No, they did not. The doctor said it, and you could tell Briar was in the position for a while because his head was
Molded.
yes. But I'm not sure. They never figured out why my body did that or he was doing that.
So they didn't figure out what was wrong, but did you feel better then? I mean, once all the C-section drugs were off, like, did you feel better? Because you just kept saying, I didn't feel well. I didn't feel well. I didn't feel well. Did you feel better once he was out?
Yes, I felt much better once he was out and once all of the meds had worn off. I left the hospital walking in a great mind space. So I think he just needed to get
out. Yeah.
Yes. And he got out. I said I went in saying I didn't feel well at 37 weeks, and he came out at 39 weeks and 6 days. So he was 1 day early from his due date.
Oh, okay.
Which is great. But it just, I knew something was not right.
And how much did he end up weighing?
He weighed 9'6.5" and 22 inches. So
There
he
you
was
go.
he was a big baby.
boy.
He was a big baby. I make big babies. The first one, she was 7, 14, and 3 weeks early, 21 inches long.
3 weeks early.
Yes,
Yeah. Then
yes.
she would have been a really big girl had she
Right.
come later.
Right. I make big babies. Thank you, Wesley.
Right. You can thank her giant husband.
Yes.
I thank my giant husband too, but your
Mhm.
husband's even more giant than mine. So
I don't know. They're about the same.
didn't we?
We need to measure them.
We measured them once, and we had them stand back to back, and I'm pretty sure Wesley won
Did
by
he?
like a half inch.
Oh.
Yeah, and he's broader and wider, like you know
Yeah.
what I mean.
He's
He's
just a big boy.
He's a big boy.
Yeah.
Okay, so then did that affect your postpartum?
Yes, it did. At this time, we had moved into on-base housing, and it was a 2-story house. And obviously, our first was only 18 months old, and she still needed mommy, a lot of mommy. And I actually breastfed her until 12 months. So that was bringing that back was she didn't forget that, and so she still wanted to breastfeed a little bit. And then I had my huge scar with over 20 some stitches, and I had to go up and down stairs, and I remember having to go 1 foot at a time, needing help. I couldn't reach over and get the baby when I needed to breastfeed at night. I couldn't get up out of the bed. Wesley had to do a lot of things to help me, which I'm a very independent girl, so that really took a toll on me. And then talking about that one night, I do remember Briar's one night of where I just lost it. I don't know what triggered me, but I lost it and just had a moment of, I was upset and crying and mad. And but after that moment, I was better. It was just hard for me to take the time to relax and sit down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the worst part for me. That didn't last long. I'm blessed that didn't last long at all. And I got outside a lot, which, helps. And we kept busy. And again, my mom came again for a couple weeks and helped. So that helped me.
Yeah. So you were able to then breastfeed still?
Yes, I was able to breastfeed, did all that. It was great. He was an eater. He loved to breastfeed.
You know how I met Briar? I met him through a picture because I had a son, Milo, our second, was born a few months before Briar. And he was a really big boy. And he, was gaining really quickly and was getting really chunky. And then my friend, if you've listened to this podcast, my friend Louisa, she said, "Oh, Milo's a big boy, but let me show you someone who's bigger." And she whips out a picture of Briar. Little did I know I was about to meet you, I don't know, however many months after that.
Uh-huh.
And she shows me all of his rolls. And I was
Yes.
like, whoa, he is bigger. And he was younger
He
than
was
Milo by a
younger.
few months.
Uh-huh. I think he had like 5 or 6 rolls on each arm. He had them on his legs. He was so squishy.
He was like the Michelin baby.
Yes.
Like, he really was.
He was. He was squishy, but now he's not so squishy.
No.
He's gotten tall and lean.
I know. It happens.
I know.
But we enjoyed the squishiness.
Yes,
while it
we
lasted.
love the squishiness.
So that, I mean, comparing your first 2 births, the second one seems, a lot more intense than
very
the
traumatic.
first. Very traumatic. So did you have to process that out with the Lord? Like, did you have any questions about that, or was that something really, kind of simple for you to take to him?
It was very simple for me to take to him. Like, I just looked at it as like, I'm okay. The baby's okay. I'm thankful for this birth story. I hope that I don't have to go through that again. But looking back as I was processing all of that, we were both safe. We were both healthy. We were both doing well. And now I have that scar it's just as another stripe for me, just saying, well done.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that was part of my story, and I was okay with that. So I didn't really struggle with that for months after.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's really refreshing to hear.
Yes.
Not that there's anything wrong with, people who have to take longer and process more, but I'm happy for that for you.
Yes. Now my next story, that's where...
So you had 2 babies pretty close together.
I did.
And then
18 months apart.
And then we know you had another one though. So how long before the next?
So Wesley and I went on a beach trip. No kids. Again, weren't trying.
But how many years later is this?
Let me think. Okay, so 3.5 years later.
Okay.
3.5 years later, we go on this beach trip. And weren't trying, and come home, and I find out I'm pregnant. And this was a shock. Wesley was not on board for 3. However, he knew I wanted 3. And so it was one of those things. I do think he was excited, but I do think he was a little bit shocked and a little bit upset, which is okay. So we were processing that, and this was in COVID. I do need to mention that.
Right.
This was during
2020.
COVID. Yes. And so, and we had moved back home at this point, North Carolina. So we were back home. And I had to pick a new doctor because I didn't have a doctor around here. And so in Reedsville, I'd heard great things about where I was going. And my cousin worked there. And I was like, okay, this is great because she can be there with me, having just someone in the room with me. And so I chose there. And I go in for my first appointment at 8 weeks, and they do the ultrasound, and immediately they don't see a baby anymore. And my cousin is in the room with me, and I call her my angel because I don't know if I could take that information and that news without someone there. And she was sitting right there, and I remember her looking at me and saying, it's going to be okay. And my mom was in the parking lot because she couldn't come in, and out there praying, and so I get the news that I'm having a miscarriage, which was really hard, unexpected, because my first 2 went great, didn't have any problems. And never did I think that would happen to me, or especially that day where I couldn't have anyone with me. Wesley couldn't be with me. And so I remember driving home, and I remember literally banging on the steering wheel, mad at God, and questioning why he would do this to me. I had to pull over in the Sheetz parking lot and really just pray. And I remember him that day saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I went home, and I had laid on the couch, and I had my 2 kids there, and they didn't understand why Mommy was so upset. And we had not told them that I was expecting. And I just told them that Mommy was working through some things, and it was okay, and I would be okay. And went outside a couple times, just walking, pacing, praying. And there was one night I had a dream, and I dream a lot. I think God speaks to me through a lot of dreams. And he came to me, and it was Wesley and I and 3 kids walking down the road. And I could tell my first two. I could see the silhouette of Brinley and I could see the silhouette of Briar, but the third one I couldn't exactly picture. And I remember him saying, "It's going to be okay. You're going to have another one." And during that season, it was a season of definitely waiting, and then a season of fear, where I was being told, "You will never have a child again, and you will never get pregnant again." And it was really hard for me to work through, but I kept going back to God's promise of, "It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay." And so, 4 months later, and I got to back up a little bit, just that season of life. My sister-in-law had just lost her baby at 28 weeks, and so it was just this season of loss for our family that was really hard to go through. But looking back, the things that came out of that is beautiful. And so, 4 months later, November, I get pregnant again, and all of a sudden that fear that I had worked through immediately takes back over. And I'm working through that, and so much so that I can't even go back to the doctor's office that I was told where my miscarriage was, that I was having my miscarriage. And so I pick a new doctor, and I'm avoiding that place because I didn't really deal with that situation. And so I pick a new doctor, we go in, we have the ultrasound, everything looks good, but that fear of I'm losing my child again was still there. And so I go in, the first couple appointments, you sit down and they're like, "What? Tell me your births. Tell me how you delivered, all those things, my history." And so I told them it was vaginal and then a C-section. And I said, "But I want a VBAC." And I said, "I'm not going to come to this practice if you do not
Don't offer that.
if you don't offer that." And this OBGYN said, "No, I'll do that." I said, "Great." And so the whole 9 months, they knew VBAC, VBAC, VBAC. That was my goal. And so everything goes great with my pregnancy, with the fourth time being pregnant, but with Baylor. And we're at the 37-week mark.
But we don't know if
Oh, yeah.
we don't know if Baylor is a boy or a girl.
No, we did
Right?
not find out.
Surprise this time.
Yes, it was so fun. So girl and boy, and Wesley and I were like, let's just don't find out with this one. So 37 weeks again, water breaks. And this time my parents had been traveling across the country for 30 days, and they came back in August 1st, and because my due date was like August 18th. So we are like, "You'll have plenty of time." And so my mom pulls in, and that night my water breaks. And like
your body knew.
My body knew your
Mama's
mom's
back.
home. And again, we were still in that weird COVID time where only your spouse and one other person could be there. No one could
Right.
visit. Just that weird time of like, I was getting tested for COVID, but they weren't getting tested for COVID. And I'm the one that was pregnant, but they could be in the room without getting tested. It was just this weird, nothing made
Yeah.
sense. So it was a lot. So we go in, and it is, let me think about when my water broke, middle of the night. It was like 4 a.m. And so we have to get it. We weren't prepared again.
No bags packed.
No bags packed, but we weren't freaking out this time because we knew we had a little bit. So we got things in a bag, and my father-in-law came over to sit with the older two, and we take off to the hospital, and we're back there. Everything's going great. And they come in. This was like water broke at 4. This is about 8:30, and they come in and they're like, "Oh, you're still a 7, and it's gonna be a while." 8:30
At a 7?
Yes.
And your water's broken.
Yes.
And they said it's going to be a while.
Right. Yes.
I mean, it could be, but
Right. And
generally speaking.
this is like 8:30, and I remember.
And third baby.
And third baby. And Wesley texts his coworker and is like, "It's going to be a while. It's 8. She's at a 7. 8:38. I'm like, I've got to push. Got to push. Doctor comes in. She looks. She's like, "Do not push. Like, do not push." I'm like, I have to push. Yes. And so 2 pushes out. Great delivery, and it was redeeming because it was a VBAC, and it was good for me. And out came a little girl. And I do remember telling the doctor, "Don't tell me what the baby is. I want Wesley to tell me." And it's so funny because they they were telling him at the beginning, some dads get the gender wrong because sometimes
They think the cord is the penis.
yes, or things are swollen.
I've personally witnessed that before.
Yes. And so he comes out, and we both thought it was a boy. Like, we just thought
We
it was a
all
boy.
did.
Yeah, we thought it was a boy. And he goes, "It's a girl?" And I remember pulling up and going, "It's a girl." Like, we were just so shocked. But it was really fun. Again, I denied like all lactation consultants, anybody coming in, don't mess with me. I'm ready to leave. I remember Wesley that night, less than 6 hours later, he told the nurse, he said, "Can we go home?" I was like, "Yeah, I'd really like to go home." So that next morning, they discharged us first, and out the door we went. Baby was latching, doing great. And postpartum with Baylor was probably the hardest for me because my oldest two just wanted to be around her and on her. And they were in school and they were sick and all the things. And so that fear of sickness and the baby, and it was just that the third one, postpartum, might have been the hardest for me, dealing with all of those things. I remember a couple days where I just looked at Wesley. I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And so he was a big help getting the bigs away while I had the baby. Yeah.
Yes, the bigs like to smother.
Oh, bigs love to smother. And it caused me a lot of anxiety. And I just was like, you guys have to back away. But that was their way of showing the baby they loved her and wanted to be with her. So, yes. Looking back now, it's sweet. But in the moment, it was a little rough.
I'm very familiar with that.
I bet you are.
Especially the toddlers, because they don't know how to smother without hurting.
Right.
And you're always like,
yeah.
I love you and I want you to love your sibling, but please get off of me right now.
Right. I need my space, and they do too.
Right. I know. Because you get touched out, right? And you can only have so many people touching you for so long before you're like, just get off of me.
Yes.
I love all my children. I promise I do. But it's personal space sometimes.
Especially that first week when you're home with a new baby and you are trying to get regulated and
your hormones are everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know that feeling well. So postpartum was harder at first, but you still were able to breastfeed and everything went, smoothly there. Now, with this one, this was the first one where you were back in your hometown, right?
Yes.
And you had like family here. So was your mom, did your mom still come and stay with you for 2 weeks, or did she just drive back and forth?
Mom drove back and forth this time. We were finally here, had family. And that was always something I wanted to, was to have a kid in our home, near our hometown, and have family here, because they missed a lot of that and our friends. So Mom drove back and forth. She was still there for that help. I had Wesley's, his mom helped. My godmother's helped. So we had a ton of help this go around. And the biggest help was when they took the bigs for a little bit, because they needed that attention and to get out. And then my oldest went to kindergarten that same time, like 2 weeks after. So that was really hard, trying to regulate all the new and sending her off to kindergarten. And so the third baby was a lot. That postpartum piece was a little bit difficult for me, and getting my emotions back under control, but I had a lot going on there as well.
Yeah. But it also sounds like you had a lot of help, which is good.
I did have a lot of help. I was blessed.
That is good.
Yes.
Well, I want to ask, will there be any other right babies coming along? But I know what your husband's answer would be.
Oh, when he listens to this, he's probably going to turn it off right now.
You can turn it off. It's fine.
Yes. My husband would say no. And I would say I'm okay having a fourth, but I'm okay not having a fourth. I was at this place with, after our second, that I know, especially with God's promise, that I was having a third, that I was having a third, and I needed a third, and I wanted a third, and I wasn't complete without a third. And I hope no one takes that the wrong way, but I just knew that my heart longed for a third, especially with that promise. And so I'm okay not having a fourth, but if I do have a fourth, I'm okay.
Great.
Either way.
Yes. We'll see what God has in store for you guys.
Yes. It's exciting.
Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing and If the Lord decides to bless your womb with a fourth one day, we'll have you back.
Yes. Well, thanks, Kayla, for having me. It was a blast talking about all of this and just kind of reliving those moments. We know moms like to talk about their birth stories, so that was really fun.
Yes. Thanks again for joining us today. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting subscribe. Also, we'd love for you to leave a review of the show so that more people like you can hear more stories like these. If you're local to the Triad of North Carolina and seeking childbirth classes, birth consultations, or a birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to our website for more information. Just as a reminder, this show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. Also, if you would like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to get in touch with me. We hope you have a great week, and remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands.